This is the extra strong eggs experiment. Okay, so what you need are 2 eggs for this. First of all, make sure it's okay for you to use these eggs and make sure it doesn't matter if they get broken, okay? Because we're going to be using them in a really fun experiment. Okay, you also need to use either a washing up bowl for this or a sink. To be honest, I actually recommend a sink, you know, where you've got the taps and everything, but I've just got a bowl right here now, okay? What I suggest you first do is stand near your sink, get everything you need with you, so have both eggs ready. Now, I'm going to place my other one out of sight just for a moment. So here's the first egg I want you to take. Doesn't matter which one, and make sure they're raw eggs, so not been cooked, straight out of the box, okay? Just pick 2 at random, doesn't matter which. Place it just in the bottom of the sink or bowl you're using, okay? Just place it in the bottom, just stand it there. Get your hand, and using, I recommend the heel of your hand, I want you to push down on the egg with the heel of your hand, nice and firmly, probably as hard as you can, and see what happens. Okay, then take your hand out, and once you've cleaned up a bit, take the other egg, and this is how I want you to do this one. I want you to open your hand, make sure you remove any rings, if you have any rings, on whatever hand you're using. And by the way, you use whatever hand you want for this. You may be left-handed, in which case you may want to use your left hand for this experiment as well. But whatever hand you use, make sure there's no rings on it, okay? Hold the egg so that you rest it first across those joints there, where your fingers leave your hand, if you like. Rest it there, okay? Keep all your fingers together, curl them nice and snugly, but gently around the egg, just gently like I am, and then roll the whole egg back into your palm. Because what I want you to do is just gently and snugly wrap the egg up with your hand and fingers, okay? And a nice even grip all the way around. Make sure you just hold it gently initially, just nice even grip. Then I want you to turn your hand upside down, put it right down towards the bottom of the bowl or the sink that you're using, and squeeze as hard as you can, okay? Remember, squeeze as hard as you can. Off you go. Now, I hope you had a bit of fun with that. I assume you've done it. But this is what we did when we went out to the street and we found 3 unsuspecting members of the public. We pounced upon them and asked them to do this experiment for us, and this is what happened. So here we are doing the extra strong eggs experiment, and we've got Phil, who's very kindly offered to do this experiment with us. What we're going to do, and I'm going to have to give Phil the instructions for this one. Phil, what I want you to do, I'm going to give you the egg in a minute. I want you to hold your hand out. We're going to use your right hand, I think, for this one. Okay. And where your knuckles are, your joints are there, I want you to rest the egg there and curl your fingers around the egg and then roll it into the palm so it's nice and snug. And then what I'm going to do is hold the bucket out for you. I just want you to lean over near the bottom of the bucket and as hard as you can go to squeeze to break the egg. Okay, yeah. Okay? Simple enough, isn't it? Right, so back over to you, so I'll let you get it. Remember where I said, so nicely even all the way around. Just open again, just a minute. Yeah, that's it. Wrap your fingers around, nice and neat. Roll it into your hand, right, into the bucket, and when you're ready, start squeezing as hard as you can. So squeeze, squeeze, come on, squeeze, come on, come on, you done it yet? Come on!
That's not going to break.
So if you want to get that in your hand, again, nice grip, just gently, fingers all the way around. Reach into the bucket and give it a good squeeze.
Nope.
That's pretty strong. So I think we have there conclusively shown that eggs are very difficult to break. So just get yourself ready, you make it nice and comfortable. Don't start squeezing yet until we're over the bucket. Upside down, and when you're ready, start squeezing. When you're ready. When you're ready. So you saw the first 2 who had a try, and that was Phil and Bob. The first 2, they just couldn't do it, could they? But did you notice from the camera and from the filming, they were going so hard into that yellow bucket, weren't they? Really, really, really hard. You could see the expressions, you could see their arms shaking, they were squeezing so hard, and nothing happened, they just couldn't break it. Of course, when we had our last man, Don, do you know, he's a big beefy bloke, wasn't he? Now, he did manage to break it. We all had a good laugh about that. But when he broke it, did you notice even he was really straining? You could see it. I hope you saw, really straining. And eventually it did break. So credit to him, he did manage to break it, okay? But how come anyway? What, even with him, the last guy, really hard before it actually eventually broke. So what's going on? Because when you did it in the sink, of course we didn't show that on camera, but I'm sure you noticed with my little hints that it broke pretty easily when you squash it with your hand in the sink, and yet you were using probably loads more force here, and yet practically impossible to break. I don't know if any of you managed to break it, of course, but most people can't. I'll tell you that straight away. Most people I've ever done this with, and I've done this loads of times, hardly anybody ever breaks it. So Don was quite unusual, but he was a bit of a big bloke, wasn't he? He had big, strong hands as well. Now, I'm not going to take anything away from him because he did a good job on it. It's very difficult to see how he was actually holding it, so let me explain what was going on. When you push down on an egg the first time into your sink or into your bowl, I'll use that one since I was using that one earlier. If I hold it there, let's pretend my hand is the bottom of the sink or the bottom of the bowl you're using. So I'm resting it on the hand or the sink. Now I come down and I squash it. Now of course think about it, all the forces I'm using, all the downward forces are coming down and just pushing down on the top of the egg there, going towards the middle of the egg. And the shell there isn't so strong when we push it that way. Now if I lift the egg out of the way and use my hands to mimic the shell, let's pretend that's the shape of the shell. When you're pushing down there, think what happens, it just snaps towards the middle. We leverage it and it snaps inwards. And you don't need a lot of force to do that. That's why eggs are quite easy to break when we bash them like that. However, when we took our other egg and we wrapped our fingers round it and were squeezing that way, I was very careful in the way I asked you to do this, wasn't I? I said wrap your hands snugly all around. So when you start squeezing now, the forces you're using, which before you were just pushing on one part of the egg, are being spread out evenly around the whole shell. And one way of thinking about this is to think that the forces, instead of travelling towards the centre of the egg like they were in the one you broke in the sink or in the bowl, here the forces are travelling around the shell. They're being spread out around the outside of the shell and being travelling around it. It's a bit like you're trying to squash the shell itself together. But of course, the bits of the shell are already close and they're quite strong when you push them that way around each other, and they can resist breaking really strongly. And so they resist. And so while we squeeze it that way, very difficult. You need loads of force to actually eventually break it that way. Now, when Phil did it, the last man, when he actually broke it, he may have actually done it just with pure strength. But it's quite possible, remember I said, I'm not taking anything away from Phil, he was a strong guy, but it's quite possible when he was holding it, what he might have started doing without even knowing it, he might have started sort of squeezing it a bit more from one side than the other. Because maybe he had his arm like this in the bucket, and it was a bit of a funny position, and he might have started squeezing it more from one side, or perhaps sort of squashing it that way a little bit more than he was squeezing it evenly, a bit like when you did it in the bowl. And that could be one of the reasons it broke. But I don't know, of course, because I didn't have any other scientific gadgets to monitor it. But I suspect that's probably what he did. And I'll tell you why I think that, because it took him quite a long time, didn't it? You remember, he was really straining and it wasn't breaking. It was only after a good few seconds that it actually broke. And I'm thinking that maybe at some point he tried it a bit harder and probably squashed it a bit harder in one place than the other, and that's probably why it broke for him. But I don't know, because we didn't have a chance to measure it properly. But either way round, now you know that eggs are incredibly strong when you try and squeeze them that way. Amazing. Okay, what about some variables on this one? Well, one that comes to mind quite quickly, of course, is different size eggs. This is a medium egg that we use for our experiment, but as you probably know, eggs do come in different sizes. So how about finding maybe 3 eggs of very different sizes? Try and find the smallest egg you possibly can, maybe a medium one, we've already used that, and then a big one, and see if that makes any difference. So that's one variable you could consider. How about another one? I've been talking about the strength of the egg, and I've hinted that the egg shape, the dome shape, is a naturally strong shape. We use it all around us in buildings and stuff too. What about if you grip one end of the egg to the other, so the pointed end of the egg, if you like, and the rounded egg, and squeeze as hard as you can now. and see what happens. And then do it from the sides and squeeze as hard as you can. I think you might already know about that one, but the one where you squeeze the point of the egg and the opposite side, I haven't done that one yet. Have a go at that and see what happens with that one too. And see if you can think of a few more things.